4 changes, 1 positional switch from the side that went down 13-12 in Bloemfontein. Scott Gibbs joins me. World champions, this is the scalp that Wales wants.
For sure, yeah, listen, it's taken 100 odd years for Wales to win a test match in South Africa. Listen, it was an ugly win, but nevertheless a good win on Saturday. They were restored some much needed confidence that was gained from the first test in Pretoria. Listen, there's some resilience. They're building some resilience, and they will think that they got a shot on Saturday. There is no doubt about that. The fact is that both sides will have benefited physiologically from kind of their time at altitude. So we should expect to see a few more gears now at the stadium here on Saturday, because last weekend's game was a slow arm wrestle, and you expected more attack from both sides. We didn't see it. It was a real turgid affair, to be honest. But great that Wales got the win. I mean, it does put the pressure firmly in the Boks camp. That's been reflected in selection. I'm a little bit surprised with the choice at 9, but maybe this is just Rassie's way of making sure that nobody gets complacent, nobody's job is insulated. So a very exciting team selection.
All right, 51,000 people at Loftus, 46,000, one of the biggest ever crowds in Bloemfontein. Hopefully Cape Town will sell out 50,000 and we make this series decider a thriller, and it does justice to what has been a very interesting series so far. When you look at how that first test unfolded, you look at how close that second test went, Wales could have walked away from Pretoria with the win. The Springboks, even though it was a side that showed 14 changes, 12-6 up on 78 minutes, it would have been a different narrative. It ended like that. When you look at this selection, did you expect it to mirror that, or do you think it would be a mix and match of what we saw in Bloemfontein and what we saw in Pretoria, or that they would go pretty much straight back to that Pretoria and these are the big boys?
I think normal business has resumed, isn't it, with the selection for Saturday. Great that Eben gets the opportunity to celebrate his 100th test in front of his home crowd. I've always talked about minutes in the game, but game in the minutes is huge, and he's been a big game player, and nobody's put more effort in his 100 outings than he has across the landscape of the Boks Centurion. So that's a fantastic achievement for him. And also nobody represents, he is for me the perfect rugby athlete and rugby player. We've seen hybrids of both over the last decade or so, but nobody epitomizes, ferocity and commitment to the game than him. So great to see that. I think, as you say, going back to the selection, it has to be more of a settled unit that needs to find some cohesion that was sorely lacked in the first test in Pretoria, much because of the Wales' defensive orientation. They took them down the leads, the knees. They slowed and frustrated them at the base of the scrum, so they couldn't get any forward momentum. Rhythm momentum is key in any of these test series. So there's not been a fluid out expression from the Boks so far. And the fact is that it's been stuttering. So they kind of need to get, they need to start up the bus again and get back into this test series with a solid, mature performance. And that's what it's going to take on Saturday.
If you look at the Welsh effort in the first 2 tests, and they've primarily played the same side, I think there was 1 change for that second test in Bloemfontein. The chop tackle has been very effective in both test matches, but they've really done well in stopping the line-out maul and the maul drive from the South Africans, which is a key weapon. And I've never felt South Africa had a definitive advantage in the collisions. And that surprised me a bit, playing in South Africa in front of capacity crowds. Do you think we'll see the Boks go up another level on Saturday? They've had the 2 hit-outs now.
Interesting question, because we're talking about temperature, aren't we? And we expect so much of the Boks in their own ability to carry well and be relentless in the way that they carry. Their pursuit when they get the ball, attacking in 1s and 2s in numbers, getting across the gain line, ergo releasing quick ball, and then we're seeing this huge whip into the outside backs, and that's when the chaos ensues. It's been stopped, it's been cut off by the knees, The Boks haven't really reacted too much of it because they've kept the focal point at running, still at 6, 7 and 8. The opposition back row who have done superb from a Welsh perspective. So I think there has to be 3 elements of on the weekend is, you know, pivot, refocus, regroup. You have to start thinking on your feet, and I think this team needs to be a little bit more nimble in its appreciation of where actually is the space and where we can create space, because Wales have shown so far that the middle channel between the goalposts all the way down, they've dominated that space. So, you know, maybe one tactic is that Tommy Reffel has been so good at getting over the ball, slowing it down and turning over. You have to make him the target. You have to target him as the tackler, because then he becomes less effective. So there are a lot of little nuances in it. But above all, I think the calm will be, we need to create a greater pulse from within. Who are the leaders? Eben, you know, you need to drive the bus home. Visa has to have, again, very good collective go forward game. And I think even the onus on the outside midfield and outside backs is that, you know, if the game is starting to get a little bit fragmented, you've got to bring it back home. And I think for me, just desserts is Willemse at the back, because, you know, he's a cool head, calm under pressure, and he's the eyes and ears of the attack. So he should be able to be communicating with 9 and 10 as to where he sees value in trying to attack. So all in all, I think that bodes well for South Africa. They know they've been in this position before, Mark, you know, where it's 1-1. We only have to turn the clock back last year to the Lions series, and, you know, they came back strong. They relied on their kicking game, not only just the little bird balls, but the little worm balls across the ground. So I think it'll be an interesting aspect on Saturday. Both sides will rely heavily on their kicking game. But nonetheless, I think we expect more of an explosive physical performance from the Boks, because, as I said, it's time now to crank it up with the Rugby Championship on the horizon.
You spoke last week and you said, on paper, that 15 that were picked to play in Bloemfontein, a world-class combination, but it looked like a Barbarians team. They'd never played together. Combinations would be critical. And you looked at the back three, Kaland, Fassi, Kurtley Arendse, lovely talents. But that's not how you pick a back three when you play test rugby against a very good opponent who has a very good halfback kicking game, which Wales do have, led by Dan Biggar. When you look at this one again, Willemse, who's been the form player, Willie LaRue coming back from Japan, so they're obviously playing him into game time, and they want to see him in that 10 channel again, latter part of the second half. But a Colby and a Mapimpi, very different animals to a Jan Fassi and a Jan Kurtley Arendse, which may negate that Welsh kicking game, force Wales into a bit of a different tactic, because that was very effective in Bloemfontein. I don't think we caught one.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, listen, what we're talking about is balance, aren't we? We're talking about calm and understanding. Somebody who understands what peppering looks like, so very safe under the high ball, also great at break-in, counter-attacking, one-on-one, but communicating with his wings. So that umbrella at the back there is safe as houses. You look at the midfield again, you know, you put your mortgage on that, because, you know, Lakanya, I would say, under pressure to find some form, but inside him, Damien Delende, they both complement each other marvelously. And I go back to maybe where I'm slightly at odds with the selection, is that I would have started with Faf just because of that whip, because once that happens and that ball is forced for Pollard to take it offline, and as a defending mid three-quarter, it's very difficult to understand when that ball gets put out there and Pollard is on an arcing offline run. It does create confusion in your defensive orientation. You start to turn shoulders, and that makes it easier for the attacking team to dominate. So, you know, there are nuances there that we will probably see for sure on Saturday. But of course, like we all say, it all underpinned by the front five performance and how the balance of the back row really get into the game. You and I have no issue with Visa, because I think he's been Mr. Perpetual Motion all year. He only knows one way and has been a consistent performer for Leicester overseas. Khaleesi again, you know, you see him having off-colour days, but then he bounces back with a man-of-a-match type performance. And Peter Steff back from injury. Listen, I think his body language last week told us a lot, because, you know, the times that the camera were on his face, that he looked just a little bit out of sorts. But again, another big game player, World Player of the Year. And I mean, he fits perfectly into that balance, as we say, when you look at the line-out jumpers and the line-out threat at the back, and his ability to carry ball on the fringes.
And he's definitely against someone who's been playing. He's a loose forward who's been playing in Japan. And we've seen, I think Malcolm Marx is probably the exception. We've seen every bloke who's come back from Japan take a couple of weeks to settle. More into the physicality than anything else. And Peter Steff, he got 80 minutes last week. I think the key is that he gets 80 minutes this week again in preparation for the Rugby Championship. And you may find him staying there. You may find him going to lock. I always think the Springbok side looks so much better when you're thinking match 23, when you've got Franco Mostert on the bench, when you've got a player of that class coming off the bench, then you've got the right balance. But Khaleesi needs a big game.
Yeah, no doubt.
Visa, I was impressed with him in Pretoria. I was impressed with him last year against the Lions as well. He's going to make mistakes because he's very heavily involved. I like Trevor Nyankani on the loose head more than on the tight head. We know that the way they play it, Bongi starts, Marks comes off the bench. I like the fact that they've gone with Hendricks, which goes back to your point earlier. They've still got the insurance policy of a Faf, the experience. But Faf was very indifferent in that Pretoria test. He's now going to Japan. And I think this may just be a thing of, mate, you may have just dropped one down in the pecking order going into the Rugby Championship. And for the Boks to be effective, Faf needs to be firing more so than even Pollard. If you take him in the Lions series and in the World Cup, I mean, he had the energy of 8 forwards. He wanted to take on anyone as well. That wasn't quite in the Faf game in Pretoria. And I think it's a good selection. It's rewarding a guy that I didn't feel was too bad on Saturday. I actually thought he had a bit of fluidity. But it's saying to Faf, we do have other options as well. Herschel Jantjies has struggled all season. He's a player that we know has big clutch moments, both for the Boks and also for the Stormers. So it's a little pointer to him. There's a few more cabs on the rank, right? And if you're not going to do it, the Rugby Championship will show opportunity to other guys. But I like the kind of team that they've picked. I'm glad it's not a straight swap Pretoria for this one, but I do feel the pressure is on this Boks side because they were confident of a 15-point win in Pretoria. It didn't happen. The bomb squad got them out of jail there. That bomb squad wasn't there in Bloemfontein. 65 minutes, 12-3 up. You expected the leaders to take charge. Eben gave away 3 penalties. Pollard, poor cross kick. He shanked that 1 penalty and went off on 75 minutes. Big names have to stand up on Saturday in front of hopefully what is 50,000 people and give Cape Townians a world champion performance against a very good Welsh side.
I'll say this last off is that over the last couple of weeks we used a few adjectives. We've seen, you know, we've seen character, we've seen lots of things, but we haven't seen intensity. Now we need to see that backlash if they got it in them. And I do believe there is another gear or two in the Boks, and certainly subject to selection with Wales, because clearly they're a little bit more banged up than the Boks. We'll be able to decipher on Thursday what type of game plan Wales will be able to throw at full assault at the stadium Saturday.
Well, I think, talking of that, those Welsh players who were in the British and Irish Lions in 2021 would attest to those other Welsh players who weren't here to say, what we've had in these first 2 tests isn't what we had in the Lions series. So there is that level to go up, and to beat Wales and to put down a marker for the Rugby Championships, this Boks team has to play like the team that beat the Lions and the team that beat England in the World Cup final. Get to Cape Town Stadium. Scotty and I will be there. We may bump into you. We will chat again on Thursday, give our predictions. But all in all, the world champions have been chosen to play in Cape Town, and that's the greatest credit they could have given to this Welsh side.